When open enrollment's coming up, which we just had in November, typically it's around that time frame, or talk to your HR department about, hey, can I claim a qualifying life event? And when you claim a qualifying life event, then you can open up your own open enrollment period. And then if your employer does have a better quality plan and you were penny pensioning before on the premiums, you can then upgrade your policy depending on your provider.
I knew I liked you. Hello and welcome back to another week of Calling in Sick. I'm your host, Alex Wilderson. So if you've been tuning in, we have been talking about basically all of the different types of burdens that a chronic illness person has to endure, whether that's physical, emotional, spiritual. And this week we're going to focus on one that definitely hits all of us: finances. The financial burden that is being chronically ill. Now, I don't have the answer for everything, and this interview won't give you the answer for everything. Now, I don't have the perfect answer for solving how to make it cheaper for all of us. But what I do have this week is an amazing guest who is the founder of Medical Billing Gurus, and he's going to break down the black box that is the United States insurance company world and how that impacts patients like us and gives us some tools on how to navigate it best. So during this episode, you're going to get a download on all things medical billing, from just foundational elements like what the hell is a coinsurance to why do billing errors occur so frequently? How can you estimate and keep track of all of the unexpected costs that come with being chronically ill? And then tips and tricks to negotiate and bring your bills down. Also some intel, obviously, on his awesome company and how to work with him if you would like to. So if you're listening to this week's episode, I would love for you to go to the comment section and tell me what is your go-to number one trick that helps you keep your medical finances in order, or your number one question or struggle that you're currently having with keeping your medical finances in order. And to set the stage, I want to just announce and call myself out. I have made so many mistakes when it comes to medical billing and medical finances. I was really lucky when I was growing up, and my sweet, sweet parents took care of everything that had to do with insurance. And then when I got my first job out of college and I went on my own insurance policy, I decided to take over that whole aspect and area of my life. Now, I was working a lot and I wasn't paying attention a lot to my medical billing. So I know that I definitely paid more than I was supposed to. And COVID happened, I definitely had bit off more than I could chew. And so Cooper and I have been navigating this whole space for the last 5-6 years together. And we view every error that we make as a learning lesson and one that we won't make for the next year. So I'm very excited to dive into this topic with you guys this week. Together, we are going to get all of our medical bills and finances in order so that we can feel encouraged, so we can feel empowered to take this all head on. But before we dive into that, a little update on my life. So I took last week off from podcasting. I have been definitely burning the candle at both ends between consulting work, podcasting, content creation, family, and just life. And I did what, all of us tend to do. I didn't see that the check engine light, that is my body, was screaming and very much on. I had been pushing through too many things, and I went to bed Monday night, prepared for a podcast episode that I was so excited to record, woke up Tuesday morning and realized I had been hit by a death bus, and if I did not honor my body and give it what it needed and the grace emotionally that I had overdone it, I was probably going to be looking at an ER trip or a hospital stay. And you know what? That's some medical bills that I don't want to have at this point of the year. So Tuesday, I woke up. Cooper helped me totally check out. We closed down my computer, limited email, limited content creation, limited social media, put on Bravo, put my PEMF mat on, got my IV at home, and honestly, by Wednesday morning, I was feeling a little bit better, which is wonderful. The pain had decreased, which was probably the number one issue I had been dealing with on Tuesday. That was just insurmountable. Full body, mixed connective tissue pain, awful vasculitis nodule pain, splitting headache, nausea, constipation, diarrhea, like I always do, because it's more fun to keep it mixed up. Fatigue that felt like I had stayed awake for 4 days, and insane brain fog. I could not hold a conversation. I could not sling words together to make a sentence. It was bad. But by Wednesday, I woke up and I was feeling a little bit better on all of those fronts. And that just continued into the weekend. But I did not overdo it the rest of the week because I knew if I did do that, I was going to be looking at a hell of a February. And I have to say, I'm really proud that I listened to my body. That was my Super Bowl, and I won the Super Bowl. Because this week, I'm back to recording. I'm back to meetings for consulting, and I feel ready to go into my next round of chemotherapy, which is on Friday. That also could have contributed to why I felt so shitty last week, now that I'm thinking back on that. But who knows? You live and you learn, and honestly, I don't like spending too much time trying to dissect why I don't feel good on certain days, because I've learned a lot over the last 6 years, and not every flare-up needs to be a learning lesson, believe it or not. The one thing I did realize during my week of downtime is that my content creation career started literally a year ago. I went back and I watched my first video that got a lot of views, and it was, "You know you're an autoimmune girly, win." And I just love that that was my first video ever, because I stand by everything I said in that video. And that kind of humor but educational edge that I had with that piece of content is exactly the formula I use for every piece of content I make today. I have 2 goals. I have a few goals whenever I'm making content. One is to give insight into the life of someone with a chronic illness. 2, make you laugh or make you feel heard and seen and validated. And 3, help someone who does not understand the chronic illness, life, and landscape learn something. In that first video I ever made, checked all those boxes, and I've been having so much fun this last year, challenging myself in creative ways to continue generating content like that for you guys. So if you don't follow me on social, there's links below. It's at Alexandra Wildson, or Wildison, whoever you're talking to, and at Calling in Sick Pod. And I hope you find content on there that resonates with you and makes you feel a little bit better in one way or another. And if you want to help the platform continue to grow, please subscribe on all the different platforms. Maybe send this to a friend or family member and have them follow and subscribe too. My goal for this year is to reach more people so that we can all start feeling a little bit better together. Okay, so you guys know I do my Alex's picks every single week. And I've got 2 picks for you this week. Both are in the beauty category. My first pick of the week is by Versed. You've definitely seen me talk about them on my social media before. I love their skincare products. They're non-toxic. They're affordable. They're non-toxic. They're very affordable. Clean ingredients, super easy to use, not too many things in your routine, and it doesn't irritate my incredibly hypersensitive skin. Well, they just launched their first makeup line, and they sent it to me, and guys, it is so good. You guys know I'm not a makeup girly. That is why my face looks like this on every single podcast. Wish I knew how to do my makeup. One day I maybe will learn. But the makeup that they sent me is awesome. I'm not a foundation girly, but I did try it. The color match was wonderful, and it was super lightweight on my skin. So if I was going to do foundation for an event or something, I would use that one. 2, they sent me this lip peptide gloss, and it is phenomenal. It smells great, feels great, looks wonderful. I'm not a lipstick girly, I'm a gloss girly, but I'm getting to that age where I should maybe be a lipstick girly, and this feels like the right product for the in-between stage. And then the other thing that they sent me was a blush stick. I usually don't use blush because I have vasculitis and lupus, and I get a nice natural blush from those 2 things. But that blush is the same color of my natural flush, so I can keep the blush consistent. Links and discount in the description below. Follow me on social if you want a live link that takes you directly to the products that I tried and would buy again. The second product I have for you guys this week is DIVI's Air Dry Cream. They just launched it, and it is amazing. I own a hairdryer, but I use it maybe 3 times a year. I am a nighttime shower girly, and then I sleep in a nice little messy bun on the top of my head, and I brush my hair out in the morning and hope for the best. Sometimes it works, and sometimes my hair looks like a piece of shit. But I started using their air dry cream, and look at these natural little waves. They have stepped up my hair game so much without me having to use any kind of heat, do any kind of styling, because Lord knows do not know how to do that stuff. I'm a huge fan. And you guys already know I'm a huge fan of Divi, point blank, period. Their products are non-toxic. They smell amazing. They actually help with hair restoration, health, and growth. And the founder is just amazing. She's a chronic illness girly too, and we love supporting fellow sick chicks. And speaking of supporting fellow sick chicks, let's dive into this week's guest, Daniel Lynch. So Daniel, he's the co-founder and the president of Medical Billing Gurus, and just a serial entrepreneur and seriously nice guy. So chronic illness patients, obviously, we hit our deductibles and our out-of-pockets incredibly fast. In fact, if we were doing Sick Chick Olympics, I bet we could have a really good bidding competition on who hits their deductibles and out-of-pockets first. It is so much to manage your finances on top of managing your health and life and work and relationships that if you're like me, that's the thing that might fall to the side and just becomes an ever-growing beast of anxiety as you see bills begin to pile up or your medical debt begin to stack up. And unfortunately, most of the places where you go and you pay for your medical service, they don't do an audit. I think I've gotten reimbursed 2 times in my entire life from a medical provider. One was where I was getting my chemotherapies done, and that company sold in a private equity deal, so they had a financial audit, and I got a check in the mail for $700. And the second was my pain management clinic, where I pay out of pocket in cash all the time. I did get a check in the mail one time because I'd overpaid for a procedure. Now that is rare, few and far between. I have been sick for 25 plus years, and those are the 2 times that has happened to me. So unless you're proactive about your medical finances, that probably is not going to happen. Let's be honest. But Daniel and his team at Medical Billing Gurus, they are dedicated to making the health billing process more transparent, more digestible and understandable, and to help people like you and I make a plan so that we can tackle our medical bills without so much anxiety. So Medical Billing Gurus does exactly what their name says that they do. They help us understand, correct, and negotiate medical bills with our insurance companies. And this team genuinely cares. Like, you're going to meet Daniel on this call and you're going to see just the authentic, genuine compassion that he has for people that are facing this with their life. He spent 3 years answering phone calls until 2 a.m. for patients like us calling saying, I am stuck and I don't know what to do. He cares deeply, and that's why I trusted him to have this conversation with us. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this conversation with Daniel, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on social media or in the description below. You can find the contact information to get in touch with Medical Billing Gurus. Hey Daniel, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. The other week on Calling In, we were talking about all the different burdens that someone with a chronic illness may face, and finances and insurance are certainly one of the most shared burdens. So I'm very excited to be chatting about that with you today.
Yes. Everybody has a story to share, and no one realizes it until it happens to them, and that you can be perfectly healthy one day and then wake up sick the next day and think, oh, it will go away, and then it ends up defining, periods of your life, and you go down the rabbit hole of our current conventional medical system.
It is it's like the worst trap ever to get yourself into, and it can feel like you're on a hamster wheel that you can truly not get off of.
Yes, and change can happen in an instant, though, so it's always hope over fears when I talk to a lot of patients, but at the same time, it's also making sure you have the right information, the right resources, and the right tools available for you if you can before you get in those situations, and understanding how things are going to play out or work in your favor.
I totally agree with you. Well, maybe before we dive in, can we dive into a little bit about your background and how you found yourself to be an expert of medical billing?
So random.
Random.
I'm originally a structural engineer by education and trade, but I've always had a thirst and passion for technology, and really went into engineering because I wanted to solve problems, but I discovered once I got to my actual job that it wasn't the type of problems that gave me purpose and passion every day. And reflecting on my personal life, my family struggled with a lot of chronic illness and ended up filing bankruptcy for medical bills. And when my dad passed away, I wanted to actually reinvent myself and find a new purpose and passion every day when I woke up. And so I started another company that was based in engineering, and then eventually found my current business partner who had some experience in medical billing and said, hey man, there's a lot of people who need help, but it's very hard to reach them because the community's also been censored. A lot of information that people are seeking is very hard to get to them, and you have to be very boots on the ground to basically create awareness that this service exists. And so I hit the road and I went around the country meeting with moms at Starbucks and going over medical bills and And honestly, at the time, I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured, if there's anybody that can do it, why not me? So
Totally.
I started reading insurance policies, and it's crazy how many people only see the coverage and the documentation for their policy versus I've seen it for a variety of different ones. It was like, well, you don't have this coverage, you don't have that coverage, you didn't know that was an option, you didn't know what open enrollment was. Most people don't even know really what a copay, deductible, max out of pocket is, and are like, how did I get this bill? And that's the reality, is that unfortunately it is a black box, but there are certain things you can do to kind of get there. And so I just hit the country visiting integrative medical clinics and patients around the country since 2017, and just got back from a trip right now where I met with more people. I love what I do every day and get to connect with so many amazing people all the time.
I can tell that you love what you do. You just have this glow about you when you talk about all of this, which is to me like a hilarious topic to glow about. But truly, I'm so glad that people like you exist, because and up until I was 23, I would say, my mom took care of all of my medical billing and insurance and picked my policies for me. And so when I had to take over my own coverage, my own policy, and managing that aspect of my health, it was so overwhelming. I realized I had probably spaced out and blacked out every piece of helpful information my mom had taught me over the last 25 years. And it was really, really confusing and daunting. And I made so many mistakes. So I'm really excited to chat about how do you start from ground zero?
Yeah.
Foundational elements, what the hell is this? And how do you make it work for you?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I always tell people right now is to remove politics from medicine. And a lot of people will say, oh, go to the marketplace because of the Affordable Care Act. A lot of people will say, go to your employer, right? What is the right option to do? And what I tell people is that you can ask people all their opinions of what you should do. The reality is step one is what is available that you will qualify for. That's where you go. You're not going to be able to go get a Cadillac policy out of the gate unless you're going through a large employer. If you're self-employed or you don't have a job, I'm just going to be real, not sugarcoat it. Your only option may be the marketplace. So your best strategy is to plan financially ahead, assuming you will get a large bill if you do have to use that insurance. And a lot of people will only hear what they want to hear. And the reality is, what is available to you? I can tell you the best options, but I can tell you you're probably not going to get them unless you're for a Fortune 500 company or executive CEO, or you own your own company with employees on that group plan.
If you are in that bucket and you are blessed to be in that bucket, what is the best out there?
Yeah. Well, here's the other variable, right? And again, I will use the metaphor of black box over and over again, because everything is a black box. You could have the same insurance policy in the same company and everything is still different, right? Because maybe certain people have access to certain tiers. So, what I look at are what can we take action on versus get overwhelmed. The first thing is typically you want to have the lowest threshold values for if you're going to use this insurance and you're like, this is cheaper than a medical bill. That's the mindset you have going in. So many people will cut corners to save $100 a month and they get a $5,000 medical bill. And I'm like, guys, just budget it in, okay? If you've got a chronic illness, autoimmune disease, cancer, it runs in your family, you're not living a healthy wellness lifestyle, just put an extra $100 in and skip dinner one night a month. Go for the better policy.
Totally agree.
The lower to the deductible, the lower the max out of pocket are the two threshold values I cling to, right? Okay. Is that when I went and got the insurance for my company, because I cover my employees' premiums as the employer, I wanted to get the best one, but I only have a couple people, right? So I couldn't go to the top, but I still was able to manage for an out-of-network policy, $5,000 max out of pocket, $2,500 in-network. So that way I can make sure they're taken care of, right? Because as an employer, I'm thinking, I can't have my rock star going down.
No.
I want to make sure she's taken care of. So I got it. So worst case scenario, if the apocalypse happens, we're looking at a $5,000 bill, right? Versus it could be significantly more and put that stress and burden on them. So when you're looking at this, right, max out of pocket, and between your deductible and your max out of pocket values is what's called co-insurance, which is where you'll have a shared financial responsibility. And what I tell everybody is that if you have a major medical procedure, you have a chronic disease, you're going to be using this insurance, you will likely hit your max out of pocket and just plan to eat it, right?
You're going to hit it in February. Let's be real, guys.
Yeah. It could be, I had a bad knee surgery a couple years ago. I remember I had surgery at the end of the year, and when I woke up 2 days in, the deductible reset, I already hit it in the first day, right? Because I was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how it goes. The second big variable here, especially with our people who are seeking integrative, concierge, holistic solutions, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, adjunctive cancer therapy, functional medicine, is do you have out-of-network coverage, okay? And a lot of people don't know the difference between in-network and out-of-network. And really, in-network means that the provider, the medical professional you're seeing, has what's called a managed care contract with the insurance that by being a participating provider, that their members, you, the patient, only have to pay your copay and then the agreed amount co-insurance unless you've hit those threshold values, right? So if you go in-network, it will always be cheaper. So I have a lot of people say, you know what, Daniel? I have great insurance. I'm going out of network. I'm not even worried about it. I said, well, have you ever used your out of network, right? You don't know how good it is going to be either. And that they're like, well, they covered everything in network. And I said, well, yeah, because that's what they're going to do because you're in network. When you go out of network, you need to have what's called a PPO plan, Preferred Provider Organization.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yes, you always, and PPO will basically let you go out of network. But then keep in mind, you're not guaranteed every dollar back of what you spend. And we'll cover that a little bit later because that's a little bit more complex.
Got it.
So when you go out of network, whether it's another state, etc., if you do have an HMO, let's say, or Medicare, and it's an emergency situation, there may still be coverage available. So if you have a heart attack in a different part of the country, even if they're out of network, the insurance may still or will have some burden of responsibility where they will chip in and cover a majority of that bill, let's say, right? But if you're opting to go out, elective, yes, that is the key word right there. It's a different story, right? You're planning to go do some IV therapy at a doctor who doesn't take insurance. Unless you have out of network, that won't be covered. And then the other common option is an EPO, which is a hybrid of them, right? It doesn't have the best out-of-network coverage, but it will still have some out-of-network coverage, okay? And then the new option, which I've seen emerge really since the Affordable Health Care Act, because that is what dysregulated the whole industry, are health sharing programs such as Samaritan Ministries, MediShare, Liberty Health Share, where if you're a member of a church, the members of the community actually chip in with their premiums to pay the bills of others, okay?
I have never heard of that, and I belong to a church, so I have been... Here we go. This is going to be the first mistake that we're going to identify in me managing my finances for my chronic health condition poorly.
But here's the deal. Samaritan Ministries is a phenomenal program. But the reason why it works, though, I'll tell you this, and I'm not trying to play politics here when I say this, right, is for 2 years you have to pay premiums in and have no pre-existing health conditions, so that way the system works, so people pay into it, and then when they need it, they have full coverage, right? But they also don't have the ability that if you have a significant pre-existing and you're going to be a burden, like you're going to hit it with a lot of financial burden right out the gate, that would flip the system upside down because it still has to be cash flow and liquidity for it to work. So it's actually the opposite of the insurance companies with how they do it, that you could pay in for years and be stuck with the same horrible outcome. But with these health sharing programs, if you're taking care of yourself, paying your premiums, and you hit that 2-year limit, that is by far the number one provider I see for out of network that pays the most 100% all the time, every time.
Okay, so that's for the people that, like, maybe it runs in your family, but you haven't been diagnosed yet, and you don't have a pre-existing condition per your insurance company. Even if you are starting to feel crappy, like, maybe start looking into this for you.
If you do have something, talk with them and see if maybe you have to pay more, right? Or you have to evaluate the situation because, prior to Obamacare with the pre-existing conditions, that's what flipped the market upside down. That before then, you could go as an individual to the marketplace and get phenomenal coverage that even paid 100% international elective abroad in Germany and Mexico. But when that flipped, the whole system went sideways. And that's why our premiums are going up. We're having smaller networks of coverage, and the overall outcomes of patient care is going down, surprisingly, as well. So it's a broken system all around.
It really is a broken system all around. But it sounds like and feels like maybe we can find some not shortcuts. I mean, they exist. So we can just figure out the user manual of how to how to use insurance.
empowering yourself
Yes.
to make sure you're living in reality versus perception, and that when you take action, your actions are defined by things that are facts versus fiction, to make sure that you don't get yourself cornered, because the worst thing that can happen is you get that large medical bill, you have no coverage, and you're like, how am I going to afford this?
And then that stress just breaks you, and it makes your chronic illness way fucking worse.
10 times worse. Yes, you start messing with the vagus nerve, and everything else goes to hell.
100%. 100%. Okay, so let's do some foundational things. We'll just run through the dictionary really quick, so that anybody listening who is this is all black box feels comfortable. So deductible, copay, coinsurance. Break those down for me really quick. I know you already kind of did that.
So deductible is going to be the first threshold value that up to this point you have 100% of the financial burden that you will be paying to the medical provider. So if you were to go to the emergency room and your deductible is $500, just assume they're going to make it where you pay that $500 no matter what. Okay.
Yep.
The next threshold value that comes after that is what's called your coinsurance. Well, actually, there was one before that, copay. We didn't say that. So copay is if you're going to your general medicine doctor, your general family medicine, or maybe a specialist. It might be a $75 copay versus $25 at your family doctor, depending on if it's a more expensive provider.
Sure.
That $25 is applied towards your deductible. Okay. So if you do a bunch of those start getting applied. Again, always check policy by policy, because with how things are, they are trying to pinch pennies too, right? Mm-hmm. Then it's the deductible, and after the deductible, any dollar you spend is going to be calculated based on your coinsurance, which is the calculated percentage that you will pay to the provider, and your insurance will pay their percentage. So if your coinsurance is, let's say, 40% and the insurance is 60%, that means whatever that managed contracted rate is for a service, if it costs $1,000, then you're going to have to pay $400. They're going to pay $600. Then that $400 that you pay after you've hit your copay is now applied towards your max out of pocket, which is the point at which, when you spend enough with those calculated rates, you will not have to pay anything more as long as you're in network for that max out of pocket. So that's a lot of numbers there. I know I'm a math guy, so I can do it all in my head very quickly. But if the average out of network, I would say, the average in network max out of pocket, we're looking at sometimes 10, 15. 25,000 for a lot of these marketplace plans.
Yeah,
which
especially
means
for families.
Yeah, and so that means that someone's going to be paying $1,000 a month. Just being real here, right? For quality coverage, to say $500 to $1,000 a month. And then when they do go to the hospital, because the saddest stories I hear are people who choose not to go to get care because they're afraid of the bill. Yeah. And then something very tragic happens, such as someone who's having a heart attack. Or I heard of a guy who fell off a ladder and hit his head, thought he was okay, he should have got checked out, didn't want to put the bill on his family, ended up having a brain bleed, right? And these are the stories I hear of people, especially men, will always want to not be a burden on their family and provide. Yeah. And we've been put in that situation, which is very unfortunate. After max out of pocket was the other one. Well, in network and out of network we discussed. Those are the main categories. I guess the main things that you should be looking at that are high level. There's obviously going to be a lot of other things in that policy. There's a glossary at the end typically that defines them. Yes. What is a specialist? What is a what medical emergency supplies care might be covered, like physical therapy, home care, health care, all these things no one thinks about. But if you're someone who needs an oxygen tank at home, right, you probably want to look at that in your policy and make sure what is my financial obligation going to be on something that's ongoing, and make sure your policy reflects that. And again, do the math. Is the increase in premium worth it? If you have something going on, it probably is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to describe that, and to frame it that if you're pinching pennies, that might bite you later on. One thing that I've been seeing a lot of is the balance billing concept. Can you break that down? What is balance billing? How do we watch out for it as a patient, and what can you do about it?
So balance billing reflects when there's a balance due to the provider typically, right? So a hospital will put you in the accounts receivable department, you'll get an invoice, and you're being balance billed. So keep in mind, balance billing will be them charging you for the deductible, your max out of pocket, right? All those expenses we just covered. But in the scenario you're referring to it where, let's say I had this actually happen to me, okay? Where I went to an in-network hospital with an in-network doctor and then started getting all these bills in the mail for all these people that I never knew existed when I was sedated, that were billing me as an out-of-network provider. Ugh. Which, when you think about
anesthesiologist.
Yes, you know exactly what I'm referring to. Mm-hmm. Oh, the frustration, right? And so what some states did, and I actually used this in Texas, was that there is legislation that says if you go to an in-network hospital, it's not fair to you as the patient, basically. Like, I remember I got like a knee brace for like $500, and I'm like, I don't even know where I am right now. I'm like sedated.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't have a say in this. And so what you can do is certain states have patient, I forgot what the word is for it, the official name, where you can have the right to an invoice or some type of breakdown of what that bill may look like. And what I think you want to get them to do up front is ask them, will there be any, because if it's a surgery, anything could happen. A lot of scenarios, right? And what you want to say is, I want you to do your best to break this down for me and give me I'm trying to remember, there's an official word for this, where it's basically you can have a quote given to you up front, so that way you can basically know what your financial obligation is going to. Good faith estimate. Estimate.
Okay.
Good faith estimate. I forgot it off the top of my head. Good faith estimate, okay? So good faith estimate, you get an idea of what the bill's going to be. And what I would get them in writing to say is, do you anticipate out-of-network providers to be providing services that I will be financially responsible for? If so, I would like to know ahead of time, so that way I can work with my insurance to either get an approval of some sort of coverage or guarantee of coverage, or to have the right to have another provider who's in network in lieu of that out-of-network provider, right?
Okay.
And that's the key here. The worst ones are typically the private hospitals, okay? Yeah. The private surgical centers and urgent care centers are the ones you have to watch out for as well, that have done that. And that's what happened to me. Is I had a knee surgery. I went to a private surgery hospital my doctor recommended. And the worst part is that he wasn't to blame. He's just going to the hospital he does things with. But then all the people that were contracted, it was like, $15,000 in bills. Like, this is insane.
Oh my God.
And some states have made that illegal now.
Yeah.
So, but it's a state by state regulation, right? And we should have it nationally. That would make sense personally. Yeah. But think of all the money people were making to keep that going. That's quite the little, playground for people to play around in, right?
Good setup for them, but woo, that is a break your life payment for most of us.
Yeah. And, and at the time I couldn't afford that. I was freaking out,
Yeah.
And the first thing I also would recommend too is if people get a large medical bill, to immediately call them and say that you would like to put an extension on this, so that way it does not go to collections or move down the road, because the longer it sits, the people you talk to will be less empathetic and care less, because it gets removed from where you were, right? It gets moved down to departments, to a collections agency, and those people deal with pissed off people all day. They're not going to care. You're just another name that they're calling. You're a number to them. And so you want to say, I want to make sure that you're aware that I'm coordinating with my insurance company on this, right? And that I want this to be not even past due, but say, I don't want the clock to start ticking at all.
Okay. Actually, you know what?
Sense?
Can we even back up even more? Like, how do you keep track? This is a lot to keep track of. Like, knowing where you are in your deductible, in your out-of-pocket. Like, what are you to, like, I guess double check the insurance company, because Lord knows they're not having your best interest at heart by checking that. So how do you get
the black box. We code the black box.
What's the code? Yeah. How do you make sure that you are checking everything so that when you do get in these situations, you're more prepared?
It feels like a Christopher Nolan movie, right? Where it's a dream within a dream.
Lord, it does.
You're like, I just want to know what the answer is. Am I in my dream or someone else's, right?
Yes.
So the reality here is that you are guaranteed to get what's called an explanation of benefits, EOB statement. There's those things we get in the mail that are, if you're there for a while, it's documents upon documents.
Pages.
And it's also in your portal for your insurance company, so you can log into your insurance portal, and it will usually show what that amount that was applied towards it is, right? So if you're in network, it should be pretty clean of what was applied or not applied. And I tell people this, the amounts, what the game is with medical billing, I'll just be honest because we do in-network billing too, is the billing companies on behalf of the provider always overbill the insurance, and the insurance companies always underpay the provider, and then you meet in the middle, right? So if you look at like, everyone's like, oh, my provider billed the insurance 20 grand for something basic. Well, they probably got maybe, let's say 1,000 and then wrote off the other 19,000 on their taxes as a loss, right? So it's a dream within a dream, right? Because everybody has their own motives. Invisible hands theory, I don't know if you heard that from economics, that everyone always does in their best interest and never talk about it, right? So it's the invisible hand moving the world around, which is why we see so much chaos and corruption with healthcare and people not putting profits over sickness, basically, right? So it's very difficult, but what I can tell you is if you're in network, right, log into your portal, or even you're out of network, it will show what they're applying. But if we use the scenario of, let's say, out of network, right, which is what we specialize at Medical Bill Gurus, is helping patients who go to cash pay medical providers that do not take insurance at all. That is where our expertise comes in, and where we work with 150 clinics around the world and work with thousands of patients every year to go after helping with treatments that are non-conventional and identifying what is and is not billable. And really the magical number with this is, yes, you have your max out of pocket, you have your deductible, which is usually going to be a higher value out of network than in network, okay? But the biggest variable of where we help people get money back from the insurance is how the insurance companies price out a service for the usual and customary rate. And they don't publish that. That is all internal based on however they calculate everything. They say it's based off of MPI, the provider, and their specialty. What type of facility were you at? What part of the country or the world? What is the calculated rate? X, Y, Z. And we see this number be everything from 0 to 100% of what you spent. So if you have a higher quality plan, and let's say you're doing something that's not even alternative, holistic, or integrative nature. Let's say it's just a doctor consult with a licensed medical doctor who has a DEA, MPI, medical license, super kosher. Let's say you pay $500.
Endometriosis. You're getting a consult from an endometriosis specialist in Georgia.
Yes, we see a lot of that, where a lot of them are out of network because they're specialists, right? And so if you pay $500 for that consult, you're thinking, I should get 100% of this back, right? This makes sense. There's nothing weird about this. Well, the insurance company doesn't have a managed care contract with them. So they can say, you know what, we actually repriced that because you went out of network and we're not going to pay the in-network rate. We're going to reprice it at $100. So you paid $500 cash and you had $100 applied towards your out-of-network deductible and or max out-of-pocket, right? And so, people will go spend, with, when you have cancer and a lot of autoimmune and a lot of people are very desperate for help, we've seen people spend $100,000, right? And depending on the quality of their insurance, we've gotten people nothing back, or we've got them the full 100 back, depending on what they did. Okay. And so that's where it comes in, is that if you go to a marketplace plan, they will reprice everything out of network, even if you do have a PPO, at Medicare rates, which will literally be pennies on the dollar. It will not be dollars by any means, right? So we've had people spend $100,000 and not even hit their $10,000 deductible, basically. Or something like that, right? So they're devastated. And so it's, when you go out of network, it's definitely a roll of the dice that you're going to get anything back. And that's the trickiest part is, we don't make any guarantees. That's why we do everything on a contingency basis, because I felt bad that if people were going to pay us and we didn't win, which is very difficult for me as a business owner when we started, you can imagine. Because I kept losing and just going to the roulette table to say, okay, let's see if we can fight the good fight here and be Robin Hood. But I kept losing because I was paying my staff to do all the work until we figured out, all right, this is, we only take on people who have spent at least $10,000 in bills for out of network, because that's even like a 20% chance we cover their deductible, basically. Right? It's very unfortunate. I wish we could help more people, but the system is broken, right? And that's why it's so important that people don't believe what they want to believe or hear what they want to hear, and that they take the time to make a spreadsheet and do their best to guesstimate or assume worst case, best case, average case scenario, and what they're going to be spending, what services they're going to be doing. And they make it impossible for you to actually reverse engineer how they calculate everything. It is truly a black box.
It is. It's so frustrating. I feel like every year on January 1, I start up and I think, this is the year I'm going to be able to figure it out and really do it right. And I think, genuinely, I don't think you can ever actually do it perfectly right, but you can get pretty damn close, especially working with someone like you and your team who can help you navigate this and like really understand without having to like burn your extra spoons or use your energy to do something that's really fucking stressful. And like you said, it's not black and white on if it goes through or not.
Yeah, it's all a risk, right? And
totally.
I hate speaking like that because, you talk to a stage 4 cancer patient who has one shot at the plate with their life savings or their 401k. If it doesn't go well at that clinic or that provider, if they don't get reimbursed, they don't have another shot at the plate.
Yeah.
And, that wore on me very much as a business owner. And so we do our best to, the way that I sleep good at night is that we don't sugarcoat it. We tell them the painful, honest, brutal truth because most people won't tell them anything like that in their situation. And they're very appreciative to at least have someone who's brutally honest with them versus telling them what they want to hear, so that way they become a customer, right? Which is essentially what they are becoming of that provider. And we try to make sure that we empower them of realistic expectations, making sure that they're doing this for the right reasons, not because of insurance guaranteeing anything. Right. And we do win a lot of times too. We lose a lot even more though, unfortunately, right? And that's just the system here. But that's why I tell everybody is when open enrollment's coming up, which we just had in November, typically it's around that time frame. Or, talk to your HR department about, hey, can I claim a qualifying life event? And when you claim a qualifying life event, then you can open up your own open enrollment period and change your coverage. So if you do work I've done this for people at employers where I was like, send me your handbook or something when I first started the company, because I don't like rules. I believe they're meant to be broken, right? I'm like, let's find some loophole in your employee handbook.
I knew I liked you. to claim a qualifying life event or something, or say you have a domestic partner, that's on them to approve it or whatever. That's just something I would suggest. Maybe you need a domestic partner. And then you have open enrollment open for both of you, right? Or for you, however it is. And then if your employer does have a better quality plan and you were penny pinching before on the premiums, you can then upgrade your policy depending on your provider. And we've done that before. If you have a labor union, we've written letters to, I did this when I first started the company. I don't do it anymore because I got a little burnt out, but I used to write letters to like the labor unions, like citing their situation to basically say, hey, please give them access. This is a firefighter who has cancer, a pilot, a flight attendant, a teacher, a librarian, and this is the situation. And, we want to let you know that they need this coverage for this reason. Can you make a one-time exception to upgrade their open enrollment period so that way they can do it? And then the other scenario that we didn't talk about are actually self-funded policies by employers, which we see a lot. Okay. So that means where they have an insurance company administer the plan and manage it to prevent abuse and fraud and whatnot. But if the insurance company denies the claims and it's self-funded, you can then appeal to your management or whoever the entity is at your organization and have them if it's self-funded, right, that means that they're paying out on the back end anyways, and cite your situation and that, you need assistance and that you would like to have this reviewed. And so we've had it before where people will get 100% denied, and then we appeal to the employer as a self-funded policy, write that documentation. That's what we do at Medical Bill Gurus a lot of times for people. Okay. We know which employers have that because we've worked with so many. Then actually get them to sometimes cover 100%. Wow, that is phenomenal. So how does someone go about and figure out if that is an option for them?
They have to speak with their HR department.
Okay.
That would be the only way,
sense.
Right? Employee handbook, read all the fine print.
Throw the employee handbook in ChatGPT and tell it to tell you what's going on.
Find one workaround in this employee handbook of how I can claim a qualifying life event on my insurance, right?
Yes.
So
that's what that thing is honestly for. It's learning to get through all the bullshit that you can't understand for you.
Yeah. And the more you think like that, you got to put yourself first in society today. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to do that, right? Just fight the good fight for yourself, right? Because if you're in a situation and you're stuck in bed, depressed, and can't move anyways, no one's coming to save you, right? So save yourself and fight. And AI is right there. Ask it anything. Upload your insurance documents to it. create a private project in Claude, create a private project in OpenAI. I use AI every day for everything.
Yeah.
And say, I only want you to evaluate these documents, nothing else, and tell me your honest opinion of what should I do in my situation, right? And that way you don't even have to bother anybody or ask anyone, and it will help guide you, and you can have even cite where in the documents you uploaded it pulled that information from.
Yes, I love that. That is actually how I picked my insurance plan this year, because despite the fact that I should know which insurance plan is best for me, I don't. So I just uploaded everything and I said, hey, here's my circumstances. This is what I usually spend and how fast I spend it. Which one should I do? And it made my life so much easier doing that, and just gave me some peace of mind.
Yes.
Talking about billing, there's always a question of when do you pay the bill? So you go to the doctor's office, they want to charge you right there. Do you do that, or what is the policy? What is the policy you should follow?
So I would defer, first of all, to see if your provider has some documentation that you've either signed already or on their website about payment. So if you go to a provider and they have a copay, you're obligated to pay that copay at time of service.
Okay.
Okay, that's a fact. You're not getting out of that, okay?
What if you think you already hit your deductible, or you have hit your out-of-pocket already, and they say, oh, you still have to pay your copay?
Well, you could make the case to the provider, because the provider would be the one that is collecting that revenue, because the insurance company will not reimburse them for that revenue difference, right? So there's a deficit in their books, so they're going to know one way or another. And then in theory, if you do pay it and you have hit your deductible and you're not supposed to pay that, or you're max out of pocket, let's say, right? Because a copay towards, unless you hit your max out of pocket, you're still going to pay a copay, right? 25 bucks. You're still going to be within that range, let's say on average. But if you do overpay, let's say you hit your max out of pocket and you had to do this, well, then at some point you'd be owed a credit or a refund, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times they're not going to tell you have a credit, so you can always ask to speak with their account receivable department and get a balance statement or whatever they can provide of everything. They're supposed to legally provide that to you, my understanding is. But it's up to the provider that, sometimes they'll give you a rough calculated cost and they may require payment up front. You can make the case to it, but at the end of the day, it's up to that provider whether they're going to render services or not. Sure. And I would hope, just because we're human, that most of them who are in network would know that you have insurance coverage and work with you on it. But I can tell you, if you're going to an out-of-network provider that is cash pay, they're going to require it every day, once a week, up front, because of the nature of the beast that they're playing with no insurance coverage on the back end for them, right? So if that is the scenario that you're potentially pursuing, then out-of-network, don't expect them to do anything but other than say, I need to put a credit on your account, you need to pay today, right? That's just the brutal truth, right? There is no... And a lot of people for out-of-network will also try to say, well, there's no one that treats this specific disease or provides this treatment in my area, and I'm going to fight the insurance company and sue them. I've never seen anybody work and win with that, right? There might be some exceptions here and there, right? But you end up just using your time and resources that don't get you anywhere and take away from the point and mission of healing, which is unfortunate.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, so when you go to the hospital and you get your bill and you're thinking, okay, I think that this is more than what I actually should have been charged. What do you do? Can you fight a medical bill?
Yeah, well, so, unfortunately, the reality is they say there's a rough estimate that 9 out of 10 medical bills have errors in them, right?
Yes.
So the first thing I always tell people to do is say, hey, I think there's something wrong with this bill. Even if you can't pay it, right? And let's say it's right. You can always just claim that I think there's an error and buy yourself more time, right?
Yes.
To try to push it back, right? The next thing I would do is I would request a detailed statement breakdown of every service that was rendered, the date of service, and the breakdown of how those things were calculated, right? And start putting the burden on them to justify every expense, okay? And then what I would do is cross-reference your EOBs to the insurance company, right? And see what your insurance... It's a lot of work, to be honest.
It's a lot. This sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. A medical bill gurus, we're very particular about who we take on with this, because we could spin our wheels and not get anywhere with it, which is why we're very protective of our resources, because it's a significant amount of work, right? Yeah. But, I'm an engineer, so I'm always a big fan of A/B testing. And so looking at when I calculate this way, if it's relatively close, it's probably X, there's only so much you can do. But what you can do, again, then to get some more data points is then request your medical records, right? And then if the services aren't in the medical records, then maybe you could try to make the statement that you were billed for things that aren't documented and try to get out of a couple of things, because, they're always, the medical billing company will always fluff it up a little bit, right? Pad it.
Yes.
You just assume it, right? And so you may find that, you got charged for something that you didn't get, and you could identify, be like, well, I didn't get a vein puncture on this day. And it's a lot of work. I don't recommend people do this unless it's truly juice is worth the squeeze, right? Because this will be hours of your time. Maybe you could use AI to do it. Who knows, right? But, if you're in the hospital in the urgent care, let's say, right? Just realize a bag of saline is going to cost a couple $100.
Yes.
Everything will be relatively more expensive. So don't think that you have an idea of what things cost. Just realize they're billing it with the insurance company. Your best bet is to identify things that were coded that shouldn't have been there, or they were miscoded.
Double billed.
Yeah. So I have an example that basically I went to get my hormones checked, right, and do some testing, and they billed everything out with the wrong diagnosis code. So then I started getting all these bills, and I'm like, I'm just trying to check my testosterone and the basic stuff that should be free or relatively cheap. And I'm getting like thousands of dollars in bills. And then it was just because someone billed out a diagnosis code that doesn't correlate with those labs. Yeah. And I was like, this is insane. You have nothing to say out of that, right? So there's all these different scenarios. So the best you can do, I think more than anything, honestly, is just use a little AI in front of you, right? Because AI is very well trained on billing codes. And so I'm not going to say it's the ultimate end all, but maybe it could catch something relatively easy without you spinning your wheels for hours and hours. But it's a broken system. It's a black box. It's one of those things. If it was up to me, I would have everything on the blockchain where it's all documented and there's fixed everything. So that way, it has a rate of growth or a rate of inflation or something. But at the end of the day, it's all transparent of how it's calculated. But they'll never do that because they lose control of the matrix, So
100%. Good Lord. You know what? One day we'll manifest this. One day that will be a reality, and it will be so lovely for all of us sick people because we'll have a little bit more handle and control on our care.
Yeah. Who? It's just a broken system.
Okay. I have some kind of tangential questions to everything that we just talked about. And this one is probably just a black box answer, but why are there so many errors in medical bills? Why does that even occur?
It's one of those, and I can talk about this. We make errors too, right? No one's immune from this. And the reality is that medical billing softwares are very tedious and outdated. Honestly, if I just had all the numbers, I'm a coder and developer. I have, I think I told you that I make my own AI tools. I could probably build my own more efficiently, right? But there's all these hoops, and every insurance requires their own documents to go through a clearinghouse, and there's all these layers of responsibility that nothing is actually, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, but they're attached to the same body, but there's no alignment of the energy whatsoever.
Right.
And so we could submit something, and we're, our coder, we have templates and XYZ, but it's just such high volume to have to go through to process things, right? That mistakes happen. And unfortunately, the people who have to deal with the brunt of the consequences of those mistakes are not the billers or the insurance, obviously, right? It's the patients typically, or the providers who are underpaid. And that you think about what patients are experiencing on their end more than ever, providers have been dealing with even longer, where they just assume they're losing money.
In a volume.
They don't have the time and resources to go after every dollar. And there's even what's called silent PPO abuse, which we specialize in, where the insurance company will apply the benefits of one policy to another that pays less to the provider, but then the provider's not going to have the time to go compare this two exact same insurance policies. So they apply the reimbursement rates that benefit them more. And until you find that, there's actually laws in certain states. Texas is another one that has great, where you can retroactively go back after the insurance and identify that, right? But most providers don't have the time to do that.
No, good Lord, no. They're getting overwhelmed by all the chronically ill people because 1 in 3 of us has a chronic illness. So, they don't have time to do that. That's for damn sure.
Yes.
Maybe another question that is tangential and random. Why do insurance companies deny so many different things? And do you guys get involved in the denial process?
Yeah, so let's think about this, right?
Yeah.
The average person, if something is denied, will not take the time to go after it, right? We actually saw that with all the blowout from the United Healthcare CEO situation, where there was a study that had shown that United Healthcare, for certain levels of plans and tiers, was denying claims that should have been rightfully paid just to see if people noticed. The majority of them didn't notice. They didn't have to pay out. That money's in escrow, growing interest for their shareholders. And so
fucked up.
It's so fucked up, right? I mean, is so like, you know, just, I don't even know what to say.
Evil. It's just evil, blatantly.
Yeah. You know, but what's crazy is I have United Healthcare because I actually get great coverage with them, right? But those are on plans that were associated with Medicare. And anything associated with Medicare typically does not reimburse very well. And there's more loopholes. So it's crazy that there's always a rhyme and reason. But remember this, every day that insurance company keeps money, it is invested somewhere in some fund in escrow, either collecting interest or making dividends or invested somewhere. So the name of the game here is taking the longest to pay the least. Because even if you have to pay the full amount, the more you keep it, the more you're still getting interest points on that every day.
Because time value money. Things are
time valuable today. Money. That's right.
They figured it out. Damn.
Yeah. You know, I mean, it's a broken system, and until we have full level of transparency, I feel like if I just had the general idea of what's the average something should cost, what's the actual markup, what are the numbers people are making, just like you should in any business, a very big, you know, microeconomics problem here of, you know, like a hot dog stand, right? How much do the buns cost? How much do the hot dogs cost? You want some ketchup and mustard, some condiments, you know, it costs this, you mark it up that, this person pays. And just create a formula and understand, you know what, well, doctors are entitled to make a profit, insurance companies are entitled to make a profit, patients are entitled to get quality care, but we can't do that without transparency because everybody's in it for their own at some point, and unfortunately patients are in it because they want to live or have a life again, versus everyone else is, you know, maybe a provider's trying to make a living, insurance companies obviously make a profit. Provider needs to make profit too. They were in school, they are providing services. The system needs to work for everybody, but it's completely upside down with too many layers of separation, and who knows all the middlemen involved with all this stuff too. I use the example of a knee brace that I remember they gave me a knee brace. Of course, they were trying to balance bill me this astronomical amount for this knee brace. And then ended up being they gave me a knee brace. I was like, it doesn't feel right. It was for the wrong knee, so I couldn't bend it on top of the surgery, right? And they're like, oh, it's only like a couple bucks. Don't worry about it. Here's a new one, right? But at the same time, I'm getting a balance bill for this astronomical amount for something that they just threw in the garbage, right? And I'm like, it's insane, you know?
It just doesn't make sense.
I mean, and I've heard miracle stories with conventional medicine too, right? I'm not just on one side or the other. No. I actually see the best results when you combine the both and meet in the middle, not just one or the other. And that, you know, with patients who are doing this, it's like, why isn't high dose vitamin C covered? There's so much research on that. It costs next to nothing compared to everything else, and has so many benefits for patients who have chemotherapy that, you know, you now see cancer patients at every drip bar on the corner on the weekend doing vitamin C to feel better from their week of chemo.
100%. And it's crazy to, I mean, I guess it's because we've essentially built our healthcare system to be like a SaaS company where you want guaranteed reoccurring revenue, and that is a chronic illness patient through and through. But these other things, I guess I shouldn't say but, and these other things, these holistic things, make that less so. Like, I would be a less profitable candidate for these insurance companies if I were to lean into functional health and alternative modalities, which I totally have done before, and they do work.
Yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about it. I've started 2 mobile IV companies.
Hell yeah. I love it's life-changing. Literally life-changing.
If I were to show you, you know, like I have a nurse who works for me, and she's my right-hand man with everything, and she IVs me once a week in my apartment. And since I've done that, my whole health, my life has gotten significantly better. We even do IVs when we're traveling on the road, you know, because
100%, you should.
I have I have methylation and MTHFR genetics that make me very prone to accrue mold toxicity when I'm traveling.
Totally.
And you know, the thing about mold is it doesn't hit you till it does, like a pound of bricks. And when you get that, I get brain fog. I can't properly digest.
You can't function.
My sleep. You get over electrified because you've got too much glutamate. You're neuroexcitatory. You never get that serenity, calm, resting feeling that you need to be healthy and balanced. And so I'm a big fan of glutathione, theanine, GABA, magnesium, taurine on the road, and, you know, nerding out on all that stuff because it changed my life, helped me lose a lot of weight, get super in shape, and most people just don't even know that this is an option, right? And it's so broken, and until we change the incentive here's the deal, everybody's going to always make money, right?
Right.
It's not going to go away, right? But until we have an incentive that the outcomes align with the profits, we will never have a change system. It will always be politicians or people who are in power or insurance companies telling you what you want to hear because we're a society of headline readers, and no one will ever peel back the onion to ask the difficult questions because they don't know how to. And that once you actually evaluate, be like, wow, like I could vote for whoever I want. Nothing's going to change until someone actually changes the way of monetization and profit.
Yes.
I'm not gonna at what point I want to change the world with that. I'm just happy when I see people that I help walk down the aisle to be there for their kid's wedding, you know? So, I'm trying to find ways that I can make a difference.
Still find joy.
Yeah, without, trying to kill myself and burn out.
Yeah.
Like I used to take phone calls from patients till 2 a.m. when I started Medical Bill Gurus. And
oh my God, Daniel. Bless your soul.
Took the first 3.5 years, I took every phone call until it just burnt me to the ground, where I make myself completely unavailable now with Medical Bill Gurus because it was just, I just couldn't handle it. And I don't know how these doctors deal with it, because these people just want to talk to someone. They just want answers to their questions,
And feel heard.
Yeah, so it's definitely a broken system, and everybody's trying to do their best. But at the end of the day, you could have a doctor who comes out of med school and they're like, I'll never be like that. They go to work every day for a couple years, and eventually they're just trying to survive themselves, and they're stuck in the system.
Yeah, and I think you have to have the time. It's like time is the resource there. You have to have the time to be able to step back and see like what's going on. How can I make it better? And Lord knows there's literally zero medical provider today that has time as a resource.
No, and even their staff is worn down. I mean, everything. And everyone wants to get upset at the providers or get upset at the insurance companies, and it's just the whole system, and everybody's just a victim of the system with not being able to change it. And at least the doctors who are cash pay, at least they're honest with you.
True.
And at least tell you that there is no way that they can do this if insurance is going to be involved. So that way you know how to plan accordingly and plan your care with them. And that's why they do it, is because the reason and you're seeing more conventional doctors than ever go to concierge, because even if they're not even doing holistic integrative, which historically defined that market, they want to be able to focus on patient care and not worry about billable codes and reimbursement.
Which is like, I wish that was the world that we could all live in.
Yeah, right. And unfortunately, we have seen some gains lately with who knows what's going to happen with RFK being involved more in the mix, because he's stirring up the pot. And I always tell people, I said, if you're fighting someone who's asking questions, maybe he's wrong, but guess what? At least the questions are now being asked, right?
That's true.
And that's what we need more of, right? Is that opposing sides, as long as everybody's willing to follow the scientific method of have a hypothesis, a null hypothesis, look at the data and agree this is the data, and then we reveal our hands of who was right or wrong. That's how science and engineering works. Why is healthcare any different? Every doctor is a scientist by definition.
Yes.
So we need to use more of the scientific method and not just have to choose one or the other.
That honestly is the most refreshing take on this current political healthcare environment that I have heard to date, and it gives me a lot of hope. You're right, like at least the questions are being asked. Everybody is having to open up the door and say like, okay, this is actually what's going on here, and hopefully that means that we'll get some answers and maybe some change. Okay, so I think to wrap this, I would love to spend a little bit of time talking about like how you guys work with like functional and holistic, because I think a lot of people like myself did not even know that you could get insurance to cover some of that aspect of your healthcare at all.
Yeah, for sure. So at Medical Bill Gurus, we're a full-service medical billing company. We work with both in-network and out-of-network providers. But what makes us different, and what our specialty is, about 89% of our business, is actually working with patients just like you, Alex, that have spent cash at holistic, integrative, alternative, concierge medical providers. And what we specialize in doing is evaluating their benefits and coverage to see, hey, can you even get in the batter's box, right? Before we try to swing at the insurance, do you have a PPO without network coverage? If you went to an international clinic, such as Mexico or Germany or Switzerland, which we get a lot of, then you would have to have what's called elective international coverage, okay? And as long as you have that, then what Medical Bill Gurus will do is we'll look at all the different therapies and services that you receive with that medical provider. And we will identify what we think we can actually bill as identifiable as either an FDA-approved service or an FDA-approved auxiliary service, okay?
Okay.
So we have a lot of patients where we get a lot of good results with IV therapy. That's our biggest reimbursing. Consults, injections, facility fees. Depending on what is being done, we try to identify certain aspects of care that we know would be basically deemed reimbursable by the insurance company if they were to review it. So we can't bill out every single thing known to man that people do at Holistic, like stem cells are a big no-go, exosomes are a big no-go. Like hyperbaric, we can't get covered unless it's an approved diagnosis, right? Like traumatic brain injury or something like that. Or if you have the bends, if you're doing hyperbaric, then it would be justifiable, so we can't bill that out. But we do our best to go through every dollar that patients spend and identify what is and is not billable. And just to be very transparent, in order to work with us, we need patients to spend at least $10,000 and have gone to a medical doctor, a DO, or a naturopath, or a nurse practitioner typically. So, based on the MPI of the provider dictates the level of reimbursement. So with functional medicine, which I'm a huge fan of, it's usually chiropractors, okay? But a chiropractor's MPI number is going to reimburse significantly less than a medical doctor, okay? So in order for us to get the IVs covered, it would have to be a MD's MPI to begin with as well. So even if we're doing IVs out of their office, we need to have clarity from the provider of, was a medical doctor involved? If so, what is their MPI that we can bill out under, or else we can't bill that out? Like muscle testing, neurofeedback, that's very questionable a lot of times and what we can get reimbursed there. It all depends on each patient's specific plan of care and what they're doing and their diagnosis. But, we work with 150 clinics, like I said, around the world, 15 countries, Lyme disease, mold toxicity, cancer, autoimmune. We've had some long haul COVID people come in more lately. And we do everything on a case-by-case basis. I mean, nothing is standardized here because everybody is different. Everybody's a snowflake, I say, when they come to medical gurus, right?
It's true.
They have a different story. They have a different insurance, a different provider, different threshold values. So we can never guarantee any level of reimbursement other than we only get paid if you get paid. And the only upfront fee we charge, and I hate to have had to do this at a certain point, is if people have Blue Cross Blue Shield and they went to a domestic provider, because we did our analysis internally and we actually lost almost money on every patient that came from Blue Cross Blue Shield because of how low they reimbursed out of network.
Holy cow.
But the international, they're not as bad, right? Because they have international, but, to have international coverage, usually that means that the policy is going to be a better policy to begin with, right? Yeah. So you're not going to be able to get international elective coverage on the marketplace. But prior to 2008, we actually had people who had those insurance plans that they still had them years later. And those Blue Cross Blue Shield plans on the marketplace prior to Obamacare actually reimbursed 100% almost everywhere. So it's kind of crazy how it flips. Yeah, so everyone always has an opinion on what they think XYZ, but that's why I follow numbers. And I just am a realist that in order for anything to work for the guaranteed outcome for everybody, it has to make sense versus just be a political headline. And so, when you look at coverage, you've got to be honest about what do I have available, and that's what we do at Medical Gurus. And then we only charge people on the back end if they get reimbursed based on what they actually get from their insurance. If we get you back $20,000 and $10,000 of that went towards your deductible, we only charge our commission on the $10,000 that we collected.
Oh, so you guys are awesome.
Yeah, it was quite the roller coaster for me the first couple of years, I'm not going to be honest. So I had to start a couple other companies to fund it.
I'm sure, but it's really refreshing, honestly, to hear someone who's an entrepreneur and is finding a way to get paid still, because that's important. It's what you're doing with your life, but also has, patients like me and our financial burdens in mind and taking care of that. That's just really beautiful. So thank you.
Empathy and relentless are what I say, is you gotta always be able to look through someone else's eyes and be relentless to not lose, right, in business. So it's never easy to do something that is great. And so with Medical Gurus, it's definitely been up and down. And the most difficult part of the journey for us was that during COVID, the insurance companies, we actually had more people than ever hitting us up, especially afterwards, but the insurance companies reimbursed historically even less. And providers were downgrading premiums because downgrading policies and coverage because the premiums were so expensive. for their employees. And
Right.
so we had one patient who worked for a very large Fortune 500 company as a VP. In 2020, she got reimbursed 100%. She spent $100,000. She was like, celebrating, this is the best thing ever. She went right into 2021 and did it again, spent every dollar she had again, thinking it was coming back, and they only reimbursed 10% versus before they reimbursed 100%. And they didn't even tell her that the coverage was downgraded. And, so we've tried to learn from those things because we couldn't predict that either. Like, we can't do benefits checks every 6 months on every single person, right?
No, that'd be ridiculous.
So we did her benefits check in November, or I think when we started working with her, got her reimbursed. Mm-hmm. And then it changed in January, and I was like...
There's nothing you can do about that, though. That's
as a business owner, you can't win them all, right? And so, but you can learn everything. But you can learn from them all, right? And that's why I tell everybody is that before you spend your life savings, and this is all the money you have to survive, make sure you have a backup plan, right? Don't assume it's going to happen every time either. Right? Because you can win big, but you're not going to win them all. And so if you win big one time and then spend it all again, then you're in that situation. If you got better, then it was worth the ROI, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? But if someone has Lyme and mold and it's chronic, it may take years to really find that full level of healing again. And every dollar, every penny counts.
Absolutely. And it can be so frustrating to sit there and kicking yourself thinking like, well, that didn't work and I had to spend money on that. But I always have to remind myself that like, I'm learning what doors work and what doors don't work for me. And if, that's a financial burden, it's going to be a financial burden. But that's literally why I launched this podcast, is hopefully I can help other people navigate what doors actually work and when to be a little suspicious of other doors.
Well, always, and I've learned this from doing business too and working with so many people, is that don't always take someone's opinion or word at face value.
Totally, because everyone's unique.
And what's crazy is a lot of people, I saw this, right, where I'm a marketing guy, right? Marketing sales guy. I've learned a lot about how people operate. Yeah. People will say, you got to go here when you're sick, right? Tell patients, because they saw their TikTok or they saw their Instagram, or like, you got to go to this doctor, trust me. Well, that person's never been there. That person knows no one, whatever. They just follow them on TikTok. And that's the society we live in. And I always tell people, ask the hardest questions possible and make them earn your money, earn your respect, earn it.
Your trust.
Versus... Yeah, and don't just believe what people say. That's what's wrong with our country, is everyone believes what they see on the news or on the headlines or on social media. Like, do your own research and come to your own conclusions versus just believe someone else's opinion. You have no idea how much effort they put into developing that opinion.
100%. And I think also, like, on that note, there's so many people that are flashy about an N of one. Like, hey, this worked for me, so it's going to work for you too. And that just simply is not the case. Like, our gut microbiomes are all unique and different. The way our diseases present are all unique and different. Our genetic composition is all unique and different. So you have to have a discerning eye reviewing anything and everything.
Yeah, attention to detail. That's everything. I tell my team that every day. It's all about the devil's in the details, right? And the path to hell is paved with good intentions. That you can do what you think was the best job possible, but if the outcome is not perfection, you still lost.
100%. And that's why we use tools like ChatGPT, because we're tired mofos that don't have enough energy to do all the devil in the details work, so we can use, this beautiful technology to lean on and
Grammarly too for typos. And Grammarly for typos is what I use. So
Lord, I need that so bad. I remember asking one of my old bosses for an accommodation to get Grammarly because I was like, my brain fog's so bad, I can't catch these things. And I was denied that as an accommodation, and that's when I realized I probably need to get a new job.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to do my job better, more. Think of all the time you spend worrying about typos that you would have saved just having that $9.99. And I assume you probably didn't get it because they wouldn't give you the IT access to put on your computer or something, right?
Correct. Yep. Chronic illness, working in the corporate America. It's lovely.
I could have backdoored into their tech for you and installed it.
Damn it. Well, I was working for the government, so that one might have been a little
that would have been fun. It still could be done, though. It still could be done, but yeah, you gotta watch out.
Let's chat later, then. No, just kidding. I'm no longer there. Well, Daniel, this has been amazing. I'm so glad that we got to chat today. I feel like I've learned a ton of things and feel way more empowered to kind of tackle my financial burden of being chronically ill this year with managing my insurance company. So thank you.
Yeah, well, it's glad we had a good chat. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach Medical Bill Gurus at 1-800-674-7836 or go to our website, and we have patient advocates available to answer your questions anytime. Just submit the contact form and we'll be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you for doing what you're doing for our community. seriously, like, it's people like you and your team that are changing the game for us, and I'm just really appreciative.
Yes, I love it. That's why I wake up every day and do it. I love what I do, so.
I can tell. We need more people like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Thanks for calling in sick, and we will chat next week. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me for another week of Calling in Sick. As a reminder, I would love for y'all to like, follow, subscribe, save, share with a friend, do all of the things. It truly helps grow this community, and it helps these episodes reach the people that need them the most, whether that's for an educational piece, to have a little laugh, or to not feel so alone. As a reminder, Calling in Sick sits on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and anywhere else where you can find your listens. From the bottom of my heart, I absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much for calling in sick with me every Monday. It's been an honor and a pleasure so far, and I can't wait to continue building this community with y'all. Love you.